Today we are going to talk about the Victoria Cross and the Order of the Bath. There's a famous store, or there was in England, called Spink & Son Limited. A remarkable place, very comfortable with reading rooms and objects from all over the world. I was there one day and a lieutenant colonel of the British Army came in. He had his 10-year-old son with him. He looked into a cabinet and he saw this object, a Victoria Cross. This object is the kind of object that you could have in your house, and if a bandit came in and stole something from your house, he would take this and throw it on the floor. That's the level of impression that this object makes. In other words, it strikes a casual observer as this is scandalous to say, a piece of junk.
Amid London's bomb-damaged buildings stands an unpretentious little workshop where that most famous of medals, the VC, is made.
It was awarded originally by Queen Victoria for the Crimean War, and it was made by a company called Hancock & Sons. They still exist. And so they made these objects, and they made them up in a hurry because there was going to be an award ceremony, and these gentlemen would come from the Crimean War, and she would pin them on these gentlemen. So they made this bronze object, and they made it from captured Russian cannons. They had a piece of bronze, and they casted it, and they made this rather plain-looking device. You can actually talk to the people at Hancock's today, and the gentleman that used to be there said, well, you know, when we made this thing, we had no idea what it was going to become. We set out to make a particular piece in a time frame with a given amount of money, and so we made this. Had we known what the VC would become, we'd have made something completely different and something much more impressive. So when Victoria gave it out, there was a public notice, and the Queen appeared there, and she gave these things out, and they all said, well, gee, this is what you got? So this thing then was given in later wars, and it was given for supreme sacrifice. It was given for things that you wouldn't believe it if you saw it in a movie.
In the 100 years since the Victoria Cross was created for valor and extreme courage, beyond that normally expected of a British soldier in face of the enemy, only 1,344 have been awarded.
And the reputation of it gathered and gathered and gathered until it reached a quality of almost mythology. And so I'm in the office with this British lieutenant colonel and his 10-year-old son. There is a Victoria Cross with its associated World War I medals in a cabinet for sale. The British colonel walks over, looking around in the office, looks at a VC, and the British officer said, is it for sale? And the man at the end said, yeah, yes, it is. And at that time, it would have been 2,000 pounds. And the British officer said, that's terrible, because the country would lose part of its collective soul, because that's what these things had come to mean. When he said that, I stood there and looked at this thing because I knew what I had seen. This fellow had identified a national treasure. And he said, son, come over and look at this. This is a genuine Victoria Cross. Because his son had never seen one, and he had never seen one.
Actually, just to see one out of a case in a museum is an incredible treat. The medal itself is made of bronze.
Yep.
And when this was instituted back in 1856 by Queen Victoria, one of the things that she said was, I do not want this medal to be made of something precious, because it's not about the medal, it's about the deed behind the medal. That's the important thing.
So I understood what he said, and I understood the nature of the soul of what he was talking about. But I also knew I could never own one, because it's a piece of junk. I mean, as an object, it's a piece of cast bronze. For all intents and purposes, this is it. This is what it looks like. This is the deal. The American Medal of Honor is in the same position as this. a piece of bronze. It was instituted in the Civil War, and the realization that this was part of the American soul came about. At the time of the remembrances for the Vietnam War, some people bought original manufactured medals of honor and wore them and didn't have the right to wear them. This created a great scandal. And so they said, especially with the Medal of Honor, somebody who do this is just unacceptable. So what we've done in the US, we've made it illegal to buy or sell one. This is something you can own as an American, but it is a national treasure and above money. In America, something above money? Above money? Are you kidding me? Above money? No. This thing, the American Medal of Honor, you can own this thing and you can give it away. You could pass it on to your son or give it to a family member or whatever, but you cannot exchange it for anything of value.
Forrest, I can't keep this.
It is very similar to the attitude of the Catholic Church concerning relics. You are not supposed to sell a relic. It is above money. That's the way we've handled it. The British have handled it in just letting the prices go into the sky. In the last 10 to 20 years, a very wealthy Englishman has bought up all of them. Everything that comes to a market. Now, instead of the 2,000 pounds, they go for as much as $1 million American dollars. Yes. And they are being placed in a British museum, and that is where the soul of the country will be deposited. So everyone that comes up now brings a huge sum of money. And this has happened within my lifetime to these particularly inauspicious objects. In my own life, I had another chance to buy a real VC. And the price was $6,000. It had a little drilling right here, which was a mark from Hancock's that it was real. And it was a Canadian dealer, and it was unengraved. Now, these things are never let out by the company. I mean, there's very strict controls are kept of this. So this was a blank one that, when engraved, would be given out. But it was perfectly genuine, exactly what the company would make. Now, how did that happen? In World War I, they made displays of all the British awards and sent them around the empire as recruiting devices. These awards contained the VC and other rare British medals. When they were returned, frequently, they were returned pilfered, and these medals had been removed, particularly the VC. This was one of the pilfered World War I pieces. So, the Canadian dealer sends a letter to Hancock's. Matter of fact, I think he sent the piece to them and said, "What do you think of this?" Hancock's letter in return was fascinating. What they said was, "This is an object, and I'm not sure quite what to call it. We made it, it's perfectly genuine, but it has not been awarded, so it is not a VC." The implication being, because it doesn't have a soul. When you engrave it and give it to this hero, his soul and its soul become one. Before that happens, this is not a VC, it's a piece of metal. Very similar to what a Catholic would tell you about a host before communion. It's a piece of bread until the priest blesses it, and it becomes the body and blood of Christ, a consecrated host. Totally different from the piece of bread before it. Let's take another British object. Unlike the VC, it is a marvelous piece of jeweler's craft, beautifully done. It is called the Order of the Bath, and in it you will see 3 crowns, and the motto of the order, 3 joined in one, having to do with the kingdoms that were joined to form Great Britain, and also somewhat of a hearkening back to the Trinity, the 3 persons in one God. the Christian sense of it, as well as the United Kingdom of England. It became in the 1850s unpopular to wear these things. They were rather drab in appearance. So the knights went out to the best jewelers of the time, and they had these magnificent objects made. This was made by Widdowson and Veal, but since this was not made by the crown, it was not returnable on the death of the recipient. The badge would be returned, the gold neck piece, but the star would not be, because the man had had it made at his own expense. Now the interesting thing is, shortly after this, because this was a sort of lifetime award that you would get as a civil servant, as say an ambassador or a court judge, what have you, he died. And what his wife did was take a section of his hair and have it carefully woven, and then a gold piece applied to the back of the star and a crystal placed over its face. And what she did was she gave it to her nephew with the idea that live up to the heritage of your uncle. Be a citizen of the empire. Contribute what he contributed. And the sense in which his life is summed up in the fact that she's made it into a personal relic by enclosing his hair within it. Compared to a VC, which would now be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, this piece in just superb gold and silver work with this heritage cost about 1,500 American dollars. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a gift. You might as well sell it for $10. I mean, come on. With that story, with that sense of soul that this piece obviously has, and the quality of the work. So that's an indicator as to what is available in this area and what has the potential, with the story being added, to really be worth almost anything.
Do you have any idea what this thing might be worth?
No, my dad never wanted to part with it. No, never.
It's £250,000.
Wow. Wow.
So
even if it's worth 2 million, 10 million, still we won't part with it. No way.
I can understand that.
No.
They are some of the most iconic things that we have in this country for our military, all across the world. And I will tell you now that meeting your dad and his medals today have been a true honour. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
One man's assessment of the soul and its value in a piece, and another man's, and how it changes almost overnight, is a tremendously interesting thing. And particularly in our age of reproduction of objects, where people have tremendous numbers of objects, really too many to feel an association with the objects. Now, it's a matter of finding objects that can drill through the junk. And for me, those objects are the objects with souls. That's what we're talking about here. That's the idea. What has a soul? What doesn't have